Well, it's simple. One's memories are bifurcated, so when you're not at work, you have no recollection of what it is you do there. You can't access outside memories. So, in effect, that version of you is
Who are you?
trapped there.
Back in 2022, Apple TV Plus had released a new series called Severance. Severance was stepping into the mystery box genre of storytelling. In that kind of story, you have an overarching mystery, and throughout the story itself, you have breadcrumbs that the author has left to not only keep the audience engaged, but to not let them in on too much of where the actual story is going. A prime example of a mystery box show would be the show Lost, where a bunch of survivors of a plane crash end up on an island and slowly realize there's more to the island than what they originally deemed. And while there has been quite a few shows since then that also kind of tap into the mystery box genre of storytelling, I would say that no other story or series has come as close to perfecting the genre as the show Severance. The premise of Severance is people who choose to separate their memories into two different beings, essentially. For 8 hours a day, you will be working, doing whatever you need to do to get paid. However, in your own mind's eye, you simply enter work and walk out just a few moments later. This is to help avoid the actual stress and pain of enduring an 8-hour work shift every single day. And while that premise alone could make for a very great mystery and a very intriguing story, what Severance does is add so many more elements to the story that actually enhance what potential the mysteries actually hold. From the corporation themselves being almost religious in some of the ways they display their guidelines, to characters that have a totally different motive than their own version of themselves that isn't within the workplace environment. And while there's plenty more mysteries that the show holds throughout, but there is no greater mystery within the series than what the corporation that severs people, Lumon Industries, actually wants. What is their goal? What are these people doing at work, and why are they required to sever themselves from their normal day-to-day lives? And there are several theories out there to hopefully explain some of that, from clones being involved.
Do you think we grew a full human, gave you consciousness?
To Lumon and the general area surrounding being the last bastion of humanity and everything else being a post-apocalypse type deal. And while there are some theories out there that come pretty close to, I think, figuring it out.
My theory? The sea.
No theory has come as close as one I came across the other day while stumbling along. No theory has come as close as one I found while stumbling around online getting prepared for season 2. And if you stick with me, this theory could potentially solve the goals and intentions of several of the main characters we've seen throughout the series. See, while I was mud-loving my way around Reddit, I happened to come across something on the Severance subreddit, a theory that was revisited by a user of the name Phil Gates. This theory basically applied one hypothesis, is that Lumon is trying to resurrect Kier Egan either in mind or body. I highly recommend checking out this post because the user who actually put it up had included a lot of details and a lot of solid evidence that I won't cover all in this video here, but I will definitely try to put the biggest key aspects. So, following the line of thinking that this theory presents, if Lumon really is trying to resurrect Kier Egan, then what is MDR actually for? The idea is that the source code for Kier's consciousness can be found in his recordings and written words. This theory suggests that macro data refinement exists to rebuild Kier. See, Kier believed that all people seem to derive from the same 4 tempers.
Tempers, from which are derived every human soul. Woe, frolic, dread, malice, Each man's character is defined by the precise ratio that resides in him.
And the idea is that Mark and the rest of the refiners are actually sorting Kier's data back into the right temper category, which is actually confirmed in a piece of canonical material called the Macrodata Refiner's Handbook. If you look closely, you can actually see the letters that represent each of the files they are placing the numbers inside represent one of the 4 tempers. Now, if this is their actual job, why the implementation of severing somebody in the first place? What is the actual point? It is believed that employees are severed so they do not inject their own memories or personality into Kier Egan during the refinement process. Evidence to this is that refinees must feel the emotion of the number. Innies have no past experience or emotion that can contaminate the code in any way, shape, or form. And on their first day, Innies are even tested with a series of questions just to make sure they have no access to any past memories. Remember, at Lumon, this is a perfect score for their opening survey.
So that's unknown, unknown, Delaware, unknown, unknown. That's a perfect score.
Couple this with the fact that employees are given meaning through the almost religious-like text that is Kier's word, quoting a compliance handbook as if it was biblical text altogether.
Kier invites you to drink of his water.
There's also a lot of art spread around that seem to depict visual aspects of his life. The break room can also be The break room can also be seen as a form of verbal repetition, similar to writing something on chalkboard over and over again. Then you have the incentives that management seems to provide the severed, which are mostly consisting of child's toys.
Please refrain from boasting about previously earned waffle parties.
Feeling attacked?
Culminating in the ultimate reward for doing a job well done. A waffle party. A waffle party that when Dylan goes to is held within the replica of Kier's house himself, and Dylan himself seems to represent Kier during that scene. All of these aspects could implement some form of subliminal messaging into their minds so that as they're refining this data, they are curating the perfect route to recreate Kier. Now it's obvious Kier was someone with quite the complicated history. Starting in 1865, what was a humble pharmaceutical company eventually evolved into the influential biotechnology industry that we see in the show today. And he had remained CEO until his death in 1933. We can also see that his influence has expanded to the point that his companies began to be involved with the politics of the world in Severance as well, with characters like Jamie Egan being referenced who are directly involved in Congress. And yeah, a company as widespread as Lumon probably has pretty good pay and pretty solid benefits. But what if I told you there was a more ulterior motive to why some people wanted to get involved with the company in the first place? Especially considering that so many external voices outside of Lumon's direct orbit are so against the idea of severance as a whole.
The point is that Mark made a decision, and that decision was controversial. Ethically, socially, morally, scientifically.
A lot of people boiling it down to the reason severance even exists is to avoid emotional instability.
Do you ever think that maybe the best way to deal with a situation in your life isn't to just shut your brain off half the time?
I'm not exactly sure.
You could argue that because of some of the religious aspects held at Lumon, that there is some form of devotion that people have just because of the great history that Kier had lived. But I believe that he started or founded what could be the first steps in actually recreating a human being, or at least figured out enough to convince others that it is potentially possible. Remember, in this world, there is literally a procedure that separates 2 halves of your brain, and you stay awake for it the entire time without feeling a single thing. Kier's family being at the head of this organization are some of the biggest advocates for the weird of Kier. Kier's family being at the head of this whole organization are the biggest advocates for the word of Kier as a whole. And you could argue they're just excited to see their ancestor again, but in my eyes, I'm wondering if they themselves are hoping to get a piece of that action as well. Essentially, if they can bring back Kier, they could bring back other family members, maybe even bring themselves back if need be. prime candidate I bring to you today is Miss Cobel, and I think she has some very nefarious plans for none other than our main man, Mark. See, while rewatching the show in preparation for season 2, one scene really caught me off guard.
Mrs. Selvig.
Peace offering. My late husband was a carpenter, and before he passed, he said he would start building us a house in the hereafter. And there would be a small guest apartment in the back, in case I found a new man before I got there.
So sweet.
Yes. He even drew blueprints, which I keep in my purse. Well, come by the shop, okay? I'll give you a mugwort bath bomb that'll make you sleep like a rag doll.
With all of Miss Cobel's weird behaviors that she had already displayed in the first place, and considered it was to add to the quirky nicheness of the show as a whole. Now, with this theory in mind, I'm thinking it's much more dark. We already talked about the subliminal messaging that Lumon themselves used to maybe help implement Kier's lifestyle into the Severed. What if Miss Cobel is running her own little side project to accomplish the same? What if Miss Cobel is already planting the seeds to bring back some of her loved ones as well, starting with Mark? It's just a very strange scene with Miss Cobel coming over and then seemingly bringing up out of nowhere the idea that her husband had planned to meet them in the hereafter, and also gave her blueprints to build a cabin that she happens to be carrying around with her. There is a later scene where in her kitchen, we see it is a mess. Sure, maybe she just is uncleanly and can't take care of things, or this is a direct result of her testing different recipes to put whatever chemical concoction that could help open up Mark's mind a little bit more to the subliminal messaging she was trying to provide with those blueprints. Her grand goal being bring her husband back through Mark himself. See, in Miss Cobel's house, there's a shrine. Within this shrine, she seems to have all the memorabilia she'll need to pray and worship Kier. Originally, I thought this was a shrine to Kier as a whole, but I'm wondering if this photo could potentially be her late husband. Now, it is very possible that Miss Cobel's shrine itself is in fact just a shrine to Kier, and that was a picture of him in general, but upon rewatching, I also noticed something else. There was a breathing tube in there. As soon as she had gotten fired, she ran back to her shrine and started tearing things apart until she reached the breathing tube, in which case she grabbed it and clasped it close to her chest, almost as if she was grieving for something lost yet again. Now on the name, I believe you can see Charlotte Cobel. I like to think that this could potentially be a breathing tube that had belonged to her daughter. And if that is the case, and she is planning on bringing someone she lost back through one of the Severed or someone close to the Severed, it makes her interactions with Debbie and Debbie's process of labor altogether a little more concerning. But the theory doesn't just have to stop there. If some people involved at Lumon are aware of Lumon's grand goal and are only involved as passionately as they are because they plan to bring their own loved ones back, who's to say some of the characters we've seen so far haven't been doing the same? Sure, Helly could be doing this to help her family get involved in politics or to make up for a mistake she maybe had made with her family. But in regards to the other characters, there's nothing to say that they hadn't lost someone and are trying to bring them back. One of the characters we know for a fact had lost someone, Mark. Is it possible that Mark himself only started working with Lumon in the hopes of bringing Gemma back? I plan on doing more breakdowns and analyses of other shows, but for the next little bit here, I plan on covering a whole lot of Severance. If you stuck through to the end of the video, it seriously means a lot. I appreciate it. While on the surface level, this show does seem to capture a lot of silly themes and complex tinfoil hat theories, it does also tackle key aspects of the human story, which can be grief, loss, and struggling to find your place. I think that if you're ever at a part in life where you consider the idea of severance as an actual good one, just try to remember that enduring some things that seem painful and hard can sometimes be helpful, and utilizing resources, tools, and those who care to better yourself in some way, shape, or form is an important aspect in every person's journey. Again, thank you guys for watching, and have a good one.